My name is Grace Myers. I am 36 years old. 20 years ago, my parents kicked me out of their house on a rainy November night because I was 16 years old and pregnant. One suitcase, my mother pointing at the front door. My father standing behind her with his arms crossed, telling me that if I kept the baby, I was no longer part of the family. That same night, they called their lawyer. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived, in the mail requiring my signature, a formal, legal document stating that Grace, Elizabeth Myers, forfeited all inheritance rights and that the Myers family bore no legal or moral obligation to her or any child born to her. I kept that letter. I kept it in a fireproof lockbox at the back of my closet for 20 years. I kept every piece of paper connected to that night, not because I was planning anything, not because I was angry every single day, but because I had learned at 16 years old that the people who are supposed to protect you will sometimes do the opposite. And when that happens, you had better have proof. I built a life without them. A real one. 22 employees, $4.2 million in annual revenue, a corner office overlooking Capitol Hill in Seattle, and a daughter named Lily who is 19 years old, fierce, brilliant, and everything I could have hoped she would become. 20 years of silence from the Myers family, 20 years of pretending I had moved abroad, 20 years of building a spotless reputation on the grave of the daughter they threw away. And then last week they showed up at my front door. Not to apologise, not to make things right. They showed up because they had invented a grandson who did not exist, and they had been bragging about him to 200 of their most powerful friends for months. They needed me to make their lie look real. They had no idea what they were walking into. Paragraph 2. To understand what happened at that front door, you have to understand what my family looked like from the outside and what it felt like from the inside. My father Richard owned a successful real estate law practice downtown in Portland, Oregon, Myers & Associates, established 1987. My mother Diane had been president of the Parent-Teacher Association for 4 consecutive years. We sat in the front pew at Grace Fellowship Church every single Sunday in coordinated outfits my mother selected the night before. On paper, we were the perfect family. In reality, every family has its hierarchy, and I learned mine early. Nathan, my older brother, was the pride of everything, the son who would carry the Myers name forward. Carolyn, my older sister, was the beautiful daughter who never questioned anything. And then there was me. My mother once called me the surprise, born when she was 34, 6 years after she thought she was done. I do not think she ever fully forgave me for disrupting her plans. The signs were subtle but constant. Family photos displayed prominently in the living room somehow never included my school portraits. Dinner conversations revolved around Nathan's clinical rotations or Carolyn's student teaching. When I mentioned making the honour roll, my father would nod and say, "That's nice, Grace," before turning back to Nathan. I learned to make myself small, to not ask for too much, to not need too much. My father had a saying he repeated at every family gathering. Reputation takes 20 years to build and 5 minutes to destroy. I did not understand then how prophetic those words would become, or that I would be the 5 minutes he feared. Paragraph 3I met Marcus Webb at the public library downtown when I was 16 years old. For me, the library was sanctuary, the one place where nobody compared me to my siblings or reminded me of expectations I could never meet. I went 3 afternoons a week, ostensibly to study, really just to breathe. Marcus attended the public school across town, worked part-time at his uncle's auto repair shop, and had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. He found me crying in the biography section one October afternoon, after my mother had forgotten to pick me up from school for the 3rd time that month. He slid into the seat across from me and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" Nobody had asked me that in a very long time. We dated secretly for 2 months. He was gentle and patient and made me feel like I mattered, like I was someone worth remembering. I still remember staring at that pregnancy test in the gas station bathroom 3 miles from school. 2 pink lines. My hands would not stop shaking. When I told Marcus, he did not run. He held my hands and said, "We'll figure this out together, Grace. You're not alone." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But I knew my parents. I knew what mattered to them. And I knew that when I told them, their first question would not be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What will people think?" I decided to tell them at Sunday dinner on November 14th, 2004. I did not know it would be the last meal I would ever eat in that house. Paragraph 4. The roast beef was overcooked. I remember that detail because I was staring at my plate trying to find the courage to speak while my father complained about a property dispute, and my mother calculated which families would attend the church Christmas gala. I said the words plainly. I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father did not move. His first question was not about me. His first question was about Marcus, who his father was, what he did for work, whether he was someone the Myers family would recognise. When I explained that Marcus lived with his uncle and worked at an auto shop, the silence that followed lasted exactly 11 seconds. I counted. Then my father stood. "You will not keep it," he said. "If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family." By 9:15 that same evening, I was standing on the front porch with one suitcase, rain soaking through my sweater. My mother had opened the door and pointed outside. Not my father, my mother. Nathan and Carolyn watched from the upstairs window. Neither of them came down. I called Marcus from a payphone at the gas station on Mulberry Street, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. He picked up on the second ring. 20 minutes later, his uncle's truck pulled up and Marcus jumped out before it fully stopped, wrapped me in his jacket, and held me while I sobbed against his chest. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you." We had $300 between us, a truck with questionable brakes and nowhere to go. Our neighbour Margaret Torres saw me standing in the rain from her window. She opened her door at 10 at night and said, "You can stay with me, as long as you need." Paragraph 5. 2 weeks later, Marcus found us a studio apartment in Seattle, $425 a month above a laundromat that smelled like bleach and second-hand hope. My parents had their lawyer draw up the disinheritance papers the night they threw me out. 3 days later, that certified letter arrived requiring my signature. The document stated that I forfeited all inheritance rights and that the Myers family bore no legal or moral obligation to me or any child born to me. Any child. Lily was reduced to 3 words in a legal document, erased before she took her first breath. Lily Grace Myers-Webb was born on July 6, 2005 at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. 7 pounds 4 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes, her father's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. She came into the world screaming and I thought, good scream. Make them hear you. Don't ever let anyone make you small. The first 5 years were a blur of survival. Marcus worked double shifts at a repair shop while I finished my GED and started community college classes 2 at a time, whatever I could manage around Lily's schedule. We lived on ramen noodles and free bread from the day-old bin at the bakery down the street. I learned to sew patches onto patches to make a dollar stretch until it begged for mercy. I sent my parents a birth announcement when Lily was born. No response. I sent a photo on her first birthday. Silence. By her second birthday, I stopped trying. Then on March 15th, 2010, a delivery truck ran a red light on Aurora Avenue. Marcus was driving home from a night shift. The police officer who came to my door said he died on impact. He was 26 years old. Lily was 4. The life insurance policy, through his job, paid out $12,000. That was it. $12,000 for 26 years of a good man's life. I was 22 years old, a single mother with a 4-year-old daughter, $12,000, and absolutely no one to call. I could have given up then. I did not. I had started doing small interior design projects while Marcus was alive, decorating apartments for neighbours who could not afford professionals, staging homes for real estate agents, willing to take a chance on a young mother with no credentials. People said I had an eye for it, a gift for making small spaces feel like home. After Marcus died, I threw myself into that work like my life depended on it, because it did. In 2012, I met Eleanor Vance at a design workshop, 52 years old, recently retired as creative director of a major design firm, looking for a project. For reasons I still do not fully understand, she chose me. "You have talent," she said after reviewing my portfolio. "Raw, unpolished, but real. Let me help you shape it." In 2014, with Eleanor's mentorship and a $50,000 small business loan that took me 3 attempts to secure, I founded Hearth Home Interiors. Our first office was a converted closet in a shared workspace. By 2018, we had 8 employees and $1.2 million in revenue. By 2024, 22 employees, $4.2 million in annual revenue, and a corner office overlooking Capitol Hill. In 2022, Seattle Met magazine ran a feature story titled "From Teen Mum to Design CEO, Grace Myers' Story." The journalist spent 3 days interviewing me. I told her everything. The pregnancy at 16, being cut off from my family, losing Marcus, building a business from nothing. I told her everything except my parents' names, not to protect them, but to protect Lily from anyone who might try to connect her to people who had never wanted her to exist. I mentioned being estranged from my family without naming names or cities. I talked about becoming a mother young, without identifying the parents who had cast me out. The article was shared more than 12,000 times. The comments were overwhelming. People who had been through similar experiences, people who said the story gave them hope, people who said someone should make a movie about it. I did not pay close attention to every comment. If I had, I might have noticed one posted just 2 weeks before my parents appeared at my door. Someone asking whether I was related to the Myers family in Portland, the law firm people, that someone in their church had mentioned it and they were curious. That single comment was how my parents found me. My mother read the article 2 years after it was published, did not read it carefully, saw the word child and successful business, and constructed an entire story in her mind about a brilliant young grandson continuing the Myers legacy. She then told that story to her church friends, her Rotary friends, 200 of the most important people in her social world. She had been dining out on my imaginary son for months, and then someone connected the article to the Myers name, and suddenly the lie she had built needed a real person to fill it. Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. 6:47 in the evening. I had just gotten home from a client meeting, a tech executive renovating her Mercer Island waterfront property, a contract worth $800,000. When I turned onto my street and saw the black Mercedes-Benz with Oregon plates parked in front of my house, my heart stopped. I sat in my driveway for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, watching 2 figures at my front door. The man had grey hair and stooped shoulders. The woman still held herself with that rigid posture I remembered, that constant vigilance against anything that might disturb her carefully constructed world. Richard and Diane Myers. I had not seen them in 20 years. I considered driving away, going to a hotel, pretending this was not happening. But I was 36 years old. I owned a company. I had built a life without them. I would not run. I got out of my car and walked toward them. My father looked me up and down, taking in my designer coat, my leather bag, my house, the visible evidence of everything I had built. My mother stepped forward. Her face had more lines, her hair a careful shade of ash blonde that did not quite match her age. "We know about your son, Grace," she said. "We know you have a son. We'd like to meet him. We'd like to reconnect as a family." The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. 20 years of silence. 20 years of pretending I did not exist. And now they were standing on my porch asking to meet a grandson who had never existed. I let them into my house. I still do not fully know why. Maybe I needed to hear what 20 years of silence had actually led to. My father sat in my living room like he was evaluating a property for purchase, assessing the hardwood floors, the custom built-in shelves, the original artwork on the walls. My mother perched on the edge of my sofa, hands folded, spine straight. They explained that their 50th anniversary party was scheduled for November 15th at the Heathman Hotel in Portland. 200 guests, the mayor, Pastor Harrison, the Rotary Club board. They had been telling people about their successful grandson for months. Now they needed him to appear in person. When I asked who had told them I had a son, my father waved his hand and said they had read the magazine article. They had assumed the rest. Then my father reached into his briefcase and placed a blank check on my coffee table. "We're prepared to compensate you," he said. $250,000. You bring your son to the party. Stay for 3 hours, take some family photos, then you can return to your life. He also offered to reinstate me in the family trust, the combined estate valued at $3.8 million, an equal share with Nathan and Carolyn. I thought about the studio apartment above the laundromat, the nights I had worked double shifts while Lily slept in a playpen behind a coffee shop counter because I could not afford childcare. The years I had spent building something from nothing while they sat in their Portland mansion pretending I had never existed. And then my father added the part that was not an offer at all but a threat. "If you don't agree, Grace, we may need to reach out to your son directly. Help him understand his family history." He wanted me to understand that they would contact my child if I refused. I was about to respond when I heard footsteps on the stairs, and everything changed. My daughter Lily appeared at the bottom of the stairs in sweatpants and a University of Washington hoodie, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her psychology textbook still in her hand. She looked exactly like what she was, a 19-year-old college student who had been studying in her room. My mother rose to her feet, her face cycling through confusion, and then something close to horror. "Who is this?" I stood and positioned myself slightly between Lily and my parents. "This is Lily, my daughter." "Your granddaughter, daughter." My father's voice cracked on the word. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Lily's gaze moved slowly from me to the strangers in our living room. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "These are them," she said quietly. "The grandparents who threw you out when you were pregnant with me." My mother started to say it was more complicated than that. Lily cut her off. "Which part was complicated? The part where you kicked a 16-year-old out in the rain, or the part where you spent 20 years pretending she didn't exist?" My father tried to use the phrase young lady. Lily stopped him. "I'm not your young lady. I'm the grandchild you never wanted to meet. The one you tried to make disappear. I know everything. My mother never hid it from me. I know about the letter. I know about the inheritance papers. I know you told your friends she went abroad." Then Lily looked at me and asked the question quietly, already knowing the answer. "They came here for a grandson, didn't they? Someone they could show off?" "Yes." She turned back to my parents with a calm, cold composure I had not known she possessed. "Surprised," she said. Then my father, the lawyer in him reasserting itself, looked at Lily and said, "A granddaughter. That could work. We can adjust the narrative." That night, after Lily went to bed, I pulled the fireproof lockbox from the back of my closet. I had not opened it in years. Inside were the documents of my erasure. The notarized letter of disinheritance dated November 14th, 2004, signed by Richard Allen Myers and Diane Elizabeth Myers, witnessed by a notary. 3 pages of legal language ensuring that Grace Elizabeth Myers forfeited all claims to the Myers family estate, and that the family bore no legal or moral obligation to the aforementioned party or any dependents thereof. Any dependents thereof. Lily reduced to 3 words, erased before she took her first breath. I photographed each page, uploaded them to cloud storage, made backup copies. Lily appeared in my doorway. She could not sleep either. She sat beside me on the bed, reading the letter slowly. When she finished, her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. "They really did it," she whispered. "They really just cut you out like you were nothing." Then she said she might have an idea. The next morning I made a call I had not made in over a year. Margaret Torres answered on the 3rd ring. The neighbour who had taken me in on that rainy November night 20 years ago. The woman who had opened her door at 10 at night and given a pregnant 16-year-old a place to sleep. I told her everything about my parents' visit, the fictional grandson, the anniversary party, the cheque for $250,000. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Those people. 20 years and they haven't changed one bit." I asked her whether she remembered the security camera footage from her house that night. She never deleted anything. Old teacher's habit, document everything. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email. A grainy but unmistakable image. A 16-year-old girl standing on a porch in the rain. 9:17 p.m., November 14th, 2004. The timestamp was visible. The address was partially visible in the frame. "That's you," Mrs. Torres said when I called her back. "That's the night they threw you away." I asked if she would be willing to verify this officially if needed. "Honey," she said, her voice fierce. "I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask. Thursday, November 7th. 3:42 in the afternoon." My phone showed an Oregon area code I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Grace, it's Nathan." I had not heard my brother's voice in 20 years. It was deeper now, weathered, the voice of a man in his 40s instead of the 22-year-old who had watched from an upstairs window while I stood in the rain. He told me he had no right to call, and that he knew I had no reason to talk to him. Then he told me the truth about how the grandson story started. My mother had read the Seattle Met article 2 years ago, but had not read it carefully. She had seen the word child and successful business, and constructed an entire story about a brilliant young grandson continuing the Myers legacy. She had told her church friends, her Rotary friends, 200 people. Nathan's voice cracked as he described it. Mum invented an entire person, he said. And Dad went along with it. They'd been dining out on your imaginary son for months. Then he told me the thing that mattered most. The anniversary party would be live-streamed on the church Facebook page. Pastor Harrison's idea, a show of unity for the congregation. 200 witnesses in person, and an unknown number watching online. Nathan said that Caroline and he would be at the party, and that if I decided to come, I would not be alone. He talked for another hour. He told me about the rules of being a Myers child, the expectations, the way their parents wielded approval like a weapon. He told me he had almost called me 5 years ago, had dialed my number a dozen times, and had hung up every single time because calling me would have meant admitting what he had let happen. I asked him what had finally changed. Watching them show up at your door demanding a grandson who doesn't exist, he said quietly. Watching them try to buy you like you're a prop, it made me realise that if I don't say something now, I never will. Saturday, November 15th. 6:47 in the evening. The Crystal Ballroom at the Heathman Hotel was everything my parents would have chosen. Chandeliers dripping crystal, white tablecloth starched to precision, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Seattle. 200 guests in formal attire. I stood in the entrance with Lily beside me. She wore a simple navy blue dress. I had chosen black, professional, understated, impossible to ignore. "You okay?" she whispered. I told her I was terrified. She reminded me that was not what she had asked. I looked at this incredible young woman who had grown up knowing her grandparents had tried to erase her, who had built her own strength from that knowledge instead of letting it break her. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." We walked in. The room was arranged around a raised platform at the far end. A camera crew was already setting up the live stream for Grace Fellowship Church, the Facebook Live indicator blinking. My parents stood on that stage surrounded by well-wishers, my mother in champagne-coloured silk, my father in a tailored navy suit, both of them glowing with the confidence of people who believed they had won. They had not noticed us yet. Then heads began to turn. Whispers spread from the door inward. Someone near the back said, "That's her from the magazine, the design CEO." Someone else said, "That's Richard's daughter." I thought she was in Europe. My mother saw me first. I watched her hand tighten on my father's arm. He followed her gaze and stopped mid-sentence. My father recovered quickly and continued his speech. I started walking toward the stage. The crowd parted, not dramatically, not like a movie, but people stepped aside, sensing that something was about to happen. Lily walked beside me, her chin high, her steps completely steady. Nathan appeared at the edge of the crowd, Carolyn beside him. They did not try to stop me. They just watched. I climbed the 3 steps to the platform. The live-stream camera tracked my movement. I could feel 200 pairs of eyes on me, plus however many were watching online. "Hello, Dad," I said. I took the microphone from his hand before he could react. "Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Myers. For those of you who don't know me, and many of you don't, I'm Richard and Diane's youngest daughter. The one they told you went to Europe 20 years ago." The silence in that ballroom was absolute. "I didn't go to Europe," I continued. "On November 14th, 2004, 20 years ago tomorrow, my parents discovered I was pregnant at 16. That same night, they threw me out of their house. They had their lawyer draft papers disowning me. They told me I was dead to them." Someone gasped. The live stream comments were already scrolling faster than anyone could read. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarized letter, held it up to the camera. "This is the document my father mailed me 3 days after throwing me out. It states that I forfeit all inheritance rights, and that the Myers family has no obligation to me or, and I quote, any dependents thereof. Those dependents, that's my daughter Lily." I gestured to where Lily stood at the edge of the stage. Your granddaughter. The one you've never met. The grandson you've been telling your friends about for months doesn't exist. You invented him based on a magazine article you didn't read carefully. Then Nathan stepped onto the stage. Then Carolyn. They stood beside me. She's telling the truth, Nathan said, his voice carrying across the room. Carolyn and I were there that night. We watched from the window while our parents put our 16-year-old sister out in the rain. We never said anything. That was our failure. Mrs. Torres stood from the back of the room. She had flown in from Portland that morning. I watched that child stand in the rain for 10 minutes before she walked away, she said. I gave her a place to sleep. The Myers family never once asked where she went. My father grabbed for the microphone. I held it out of his reach one last time. I didn't come here to destroy you, I said, quietly enough that only those on stage could hear. I came here because I'm done being invisible. Then I turned back to the crowd and raised my voice. I'm not asking for your pity. I don't need it. 20 years ago I was thrown out with nothing. Today I own a design company in Seattle with 22 employees and over $4 million in annual revenue. My daughter is a sophomore at the University of Washington. We built our lives without the Myers family's help. I looked directly at the live stream camera. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my parents tried to buy my silence last week, $250,000 to pretend their lies were true. I'm here because they deserve to face the consequences of what they did, not in private, but in front of the community they value more than their own children. Lily climbed onto the stage and took my hand. I'm Lily, she said into the microphone. The granddaughter they never wanted. I'm 19 years old. I've known my whole life that my grandparents chose their reputation over my mother, and by extension over me. You could have known me. You could have watched me grow up. You could have been at my birthday parties, my school plays, my high school graduation. You chose not to. And now you don't get to pretend that was ever our fault. We walked off the stage. At the door I turned back one final time. One more thing. I'm not going to sue you.